So my name is Brian Bossarts. I am the city manager here in Bedford. And we're here today to give you an overview of the city's budget. The proposed budget that we presented to the mayor and council that they'll ultimately be approving in a meeting in September. It was just shared with me that I have to admit I'm not much into social media, so I don't read Nextdoor, but it's my understanding on Nextdoor, the reason the city's taxes are going up is because we're building a monorail. We're building a monorail. Now, I think, being new to Texas, I do believe we need some mass transit here, but I'm not so sure the city of Bedford should be building a monorail. But I'm here to share with you, we're not building a monorail, so that's not happening. So I'm not so sure how this kind of rumor start, but anyway. So we've got a lot of staff here tonight. If there are specific questions about specific aspects of the city's budget, we can certainly get into that. We're going to give you what I hope to be a brief overview of that, then allow you to ask us questions. But just in terms of the process that we go through, this is a policy cycle that kind of shows really it gets into the heart of how we operate in local government. So you start up there at the top of the policy direction, and that's the mayor and council's role. They set the vision for our organization, they set the vision for the city. And if you look to the left, it says citizen perspective, and they get that vision, that perspective from our residents, the input that you provide. They set policy. We as staff have to interpret that policy, and then we ultimately develop a budget. So we develop that budget, we bring it to the council in September, hopefully that budget gets adopted, and from there, we take that budget, we start developing plans. We start developing specific plans that are going to meet the mayor and council's goals that were developed in that budget. We go out and we actually follow through with all those projects, all those plans. Hopefully we produce positive results, but we're going to know that because we're going to measure how well we're doing. Those measurements get taken, citizens tell us how well we're doing, and that cycle continues. And we are always at some point in that cycle, every single day, 365 days a year, with respect to how we operate local government. So that's where this budget adoption and decision that the mayor and council make is one of the most important decisions that the mayor and council actually make every given year. And with that in mind, I should introduce the council members who are here. So Mayor Griffin is here, Councilmember Turner is here, Councilmember Cogan, and Fisher are here today. So thank you for being here tonight. Last year, mayor and council, we actually brought the mayor and council a budget proposed that was over the rollback rail. It actually triggered the citizen petition process where the citizens could have said, no, we don't want to be that high. And that was a very tough decision that the mayor and council made that year. It was an extremely tough decision because in the end, and what I'm going to be showing you, the city has enough money to operate, the city has enough money to fund the services that we provide today to our residents. But we don't have much more than that. So the proposed budget that we provided to the mayor and council provides no new programs, it provides no new services. It's a status quo budget. It includes we have a step plan that pays our public safety employees, our fire and our police personnel. So it includes a step raise for all of our public safety. It includes a 3% for our employees, for general employees. Other than that, I guess you could say that is new. But other than that, it's a status quo budget. It funds basic level of service. There's nothing new inside the budget. There are certain contracts that we have in place that are multi-year that have escalators in them that go up. So we include those kinds of things. But again, there's nothing new in our budget itself. And this is partly why, excuse me, before I get there, that this is a tax rate history. And so the city has taken and been very mindful and purposeful at this, has taken a very conservative approach to budgeting through the years. So this goes back to 2009. This is 10 years of data. That top line is the rollback rate. That is where, through the years, the city of Bedford could have set its tax rate. And it chose not to. It chose to be conservative in how we budget. And that's a valid decision to be making. And then again, this chart demonstrates that conservative nature over the years that we have had in terms of budget. So the actual rate that got set is the blue line. And then the effective rate, which is when you calculate the amount of tax from the previous year, and what it would take from the next year to generate that exact same tax, that's that effective rate. But expenses go up every single year. And so we've got those kinds of modest increases. But again, this chart demonstrates the conservative nature of the city over time. And what this chart demonstrates is the problem that we have as a city and the problem we're going to have moving forward. Our expenditures are outpacing our revenues. We have a revenue problem. And when I got here 16 months ago and realized that, I poured through the line item detail of the city's budget, and I started looking for those big ticket items that we can cut, that we can get rid of. Because, you know, as a city, we as a council staff, as council, we have one of two options. We bring in more money or we decrease what we spend, right? I immediately went to the expenditure side, started looking for those items that maybe they're nice to have, that we need to cut them out in order to decrease the gap that exists here. And those big ticket items, they don't exist anymore because we've already done that kind of cut. So for us, the only lever right now the mayor and council can move that brings in revenue is the property tax line. And that is not a place over time that we want to be. So we need to diversify our revenue streams, look for new revenues. Do we need to take a look at the fees that we charge? But you know, you get to a point where if you increase the fee, people aren't going to want to use the service. They're not going to want to walk into a rec center. They're not going to want to pay for whatever that service might be. So I think you got to get to that sweet spot where it makes sense. That covers our expenses. But that, in a nutshell, is the city's problem. Because what you're seeing on this graph, a linear approach to what's happening through the years, and you see to the very right, the top line is expenditures, which is the purplish line, the bottom line, the red or the pink line. Those are revenues. And there's a gap. And the expenditure line is over the revenue line. And that's a problem for us. And that's what we need to fix moving forward. And this is a 5-year forecast of where we see this going. And again, the green line being expenditures, the blue line being revenue. And that's a projection moving forward through the next 5 years of where we see this headed. And so that's the challenge that we have, because the needs are still there for the services that we provide. How do we continue to fund it? So again, the budget we propose to the mayor and council has nothing new in it, other than a modest increase for pay for staff and those contracts I was talking about. It's a status quo budget. Tax rates going up, and I'm going to hand it over to our budget manager here in a second, and she'll walk through some of the more specifics of the budget. And the tax rate is going up because Phase Next passed. We went to the voters last year, $70 million bond election. The voters said, yeah, we want this. And we said from the very beginning that if that passed, that was going to increase our tax rate by about 4 to 5 cents. In the end, it came down to 3.8 cents. So we were pretty close with our estimate. But that's the reason in our proposed budget right now that our tax rate went up. It's because the voters said yes to Phase Next. And we need to pass that cost on because of what we're seeing right now with respect to where our revenues and expenditures are. But I mean, the voters said it. I mean, that's the question you ask yourself when you walk into the polls. Well, I will only increase my property tax in order to have this new amenity, whatever it is we're asking for. And that's the increase right now in the tax rate. And so we'll get into some more of the specifics. So I'm going to turn it over to our budget manager, Meg Jacoby, and she'll walk through some of the more specific aspects of the budget.
So we start each year with looking at what are our expenses, what expenses have changed, and part of that is the same economic conditions you look at as your own household. And so we each year look at 2 different indexes. One is the consumer price index. It's that shopping basket of goods. You've heard of that for your own household. There is another index, which is the items that are more typically bought by municipalities. So this is where you're going to find asphalt and concrete and those things that municipalities are using to make sure city services keep operating, city streets are still maintained. So you can see, looking at this chart, the numbers go up and down every year as how those price fluctuations change. But on average, for those items that cities typically buy, we're at 1.6% increase per year. So that impacts any of our maintenance projects on our roads, things like that. Those costs go up. CPI just under 1.5%. So that's the same climate everyone finds themselves in as they're shopping. Our expenses do the same. This chart here is looking at some of our neighbors and some of their budgeting practices. And so the purple bars show the current year budget per capita. Now, this excludes capital projects, major infrastructure repairs, but, so this is your operational spending per capita. And the red line across is right about where Bedford's at. So one of the lower, that's the budgeting decisions and the philosophy that's been adopted by the council, and that's where this sits. The green line is our employees per 1,000 population. So there we're pretty well in the mix with our neighbors. But, you know, when you look at, well, why does South Lake have what they have, part of it is in their budgeting philosophy. And you can see where their per capita is at. Sales tax, one of the other major drivers that we always look to see what's happening. We are, if you look at that second column, comparison to average, you see 2018 is doing pretty good. We did remove the 2 outlier years. You can see here 2015, 2016, we were pulling in $13 million plus a year. We lost one major player in our economic landscape. One business did, due to their operational decisions, they left the city. So that had a major impact in our sales tax collections. Thankfully, it didn't have a major impact in our budgeting decisions. We hadn't been, depending on that revenue, it had been earmarked with economic development incentives. And so we didn't feel the impact as significantly on the operating side. And we're seeing that even in the absence of that change, we're still seeing positive trend growth in our sales tax. So we're happy to see that and keep watching that as we move into it. So we've increased our budget figures there for this year. Looking at the budget as a whole, bringing my other laptop over next time. This is revenues by fund. So all of the labels decided they didn't want to work today. The biggest blue piece here, that's our general fund. So that's your primary operating fund. Your next largest piece, water, sewer, utility. And then from there it goes into quite a few smaller funds, and you may ask, well, why do you have that many funds? And a lot of them it's because the legislative tells us that this pot of money can only be spent on these pots of things. And so we keep the money separate to make sure we comply with what that money can be used for. So unfortunately for those, you know, we can't use it to balance deficiencies in the general fund. Because for instance, our hotel motel tax, our tourism fund, is only allowed to be spent on activities, events, things that will bring people into our city. And so that's where those expenditures are set. So it's its own little fund. We have funds for court security and court technology that go along with our fines. The legislature authorizes us to collect those funds. We use them for purposes related to our court operations, but that's the only things they can be used for. So we have a smattering of funds like that, and so that sits in for there. Expenditures by function. Right. Public Works is in this yellow right here. That's that bigger piece. You've got, and that's because water and sewer is primary public works, our wastewater system, our water treatment system. Down here, we've got public safety. These two here, it's police and fire. And then you've got all your smaller pieces. You have your general government, community services, library, support services, human resources is in there. Non-departmental is those citywide expenses, like our insurance, the city's insurance. Just like you have homeowners insurance, you have auto insurance, we have insurance for our operations as well. Looking at the general fund more specifically, okay, almost 42% is property tax. As Brian referenced, that's the biggest piece that we have control over. After that, we have our sales tax, and then other taxes, and franchise taxes, charges for services. So those user fees for recreation, for admission to splash, fines and forfeitures. That's not only our police department and their fines, it's also library fines. So if someone has an overdue item, that's where that money is going into there. Operating transfers from the other funds. We do have a little bit of other governmental, for instance, our teen court is, the expenses are shared with First and Euless. Expenditures, so for the general fund, the pie changes. So these 2/3 of this budget, the orange and the purple here, are police and fire. So 2/3 general fund is public safety, right off the bat. And then from there, you have your other departments, your development, human resources, it's pretty much the same one. So there were some increases in those costs this year. We had increases in our insurance. We also this year had a compensation study done to see where our pay fell in the market. And so the consultant came in, did the survey, and then provided us with recommended changes to our salary plan. And so we're making those changes as part of this proposed budget. And in order to keep our employees moving along the pay grade like we would want to see, to again remain competitive and retain our employees, we do have a 3% across the board for civilian employees, and the next year the step plan for police and fire. So all of that is included. That's the bulk of, quite a bit of the bulk of the spending increases. Additionally, last year our city council did approve a program with Enterprise to replace quite a bit of our fleet. So we have about 180 vehicles. We normally in pattern have them replace one, maybe two a year. With this Enterprise program, we replaced 50 vehicles last year. And this year we look to replace 30. So moving our employees into vehicles with little maintenance cost, better fuel efficiency, safer vehicles for our employees as they go about providing that service to our residents. Okay, so this chart is classification. So 78% of the general fund is personnel. It's the bodies that are providing the direct delivery services to our residents. From there, we have supplies, maintenance, contractual services. We have our utilities, so our water bill, our electric bill. We have to pay that just the same as everyone else. And then transfers, so we do transfer money into some maintenance accounts, things like that. And so you can see when you look at our general fund budget, I might as well, as Brian said, I looked through it, I'm going to find places to cut. The problem is, in order to cut, it has to be people to make an impact. 78% personnel. Okay, so we'll just hop through a couple of the other pieces. Debt service fund. You can see here the history with our charts. So we have the purple is our general fund debt. So you can see the spike with Phase Next. And the blue, the reason you're seeing spikes in there is our SWIFT. It's our low-interest loan that we received from the Texas Water Development Board. It's helping us address quite a bit of our water infrastructure needs. But that's where some of those issuances have been occurring. We did issue a little bit of stormwater debt as well that had been previously authorized to address some drainage problems that we've been looking for resources to address. So I think the line shifted a little bit with all the other problems we're having with this PowerPoint. The line should be pretty much right there at the spike. So you can see we're going to start tapering off almost immediately after this next year. So looking at water and sewer fund, these are your current rates. So we purchase water from the Trinity River Authority, and we pay the Trinity River Authority to treat our wastewater. And so just like we have as part of your bill, where we pay, we have you pay $3.83 per 1,000 gallons of water, or $3 per 1,000 gallons treated of sewer, we pay our costs to the Trinity River Authority on those same volumes. And so you can see out of that $3.83 of your water-based volume, $3.61 of it we're paying directly to the Trinity River Authority for that water cost and treatment. Each year, we will be recommending an increase to our rates. And so for water, our base rates are fine. We've got enough money there to cover our water operations. So the increase on the water rates will be simply the pass-through from the Trinity River Authority. So that is 25 cents, approximately 25 cents per 1,000. Now, on the sewer, we do a rate analysis each year to make sure those revenue dollars cover our costs, the people we have to go address a break, to take care of that system. And based on that analysis, we are recommending a base increase plus a volume increase in addition to the Trinity River Authority increase. So we're going to see a 41-cent increase on the volume, which is a 2% on the rate on the base. So we also look at what that looks like for an average user. So for a 16,000 gallon user, so this is summer, this is generally your highest usage. Expect about a $7 increase on your bill based on these rates. And I will also caveat that these rates are not final. We're going to get to some unmet needs a little bit later in the presentation. And the City Council will be evaluating to see how we can address some wastewater needs that we have. And that may come into some additional changes to the rates to make sure we can fund those because we have pipes in the ground that are getting close or over 60 years. And so we need to address those to make sure that water gets carried safely away and off to treatment. Okay, so we'll wrap up tax rate. 2017-2018 current tax rate is 52 cents per 100. The effective rate is just over 48 cents. Rollback, 56 cent, 561862 per $100 of value. So that is the rollback rate. Now the council, as part of their continuing discussions, set a max rate. Now this is not an adopted rate. There are still discussions that are going to be had. But if you happen to notice in the paper, and we're concerned that it was saying, well, you're raising $3 million, and we don't really know why, that's not necessarily the case. The $3 million is based on the highest rate the council could consider. That does not mean they will be adopting it. And so that's where some of that comes into play. The council is going to have some further discussions based on some of these needs that we'll get to in a minute to create the final budget package that they'll be adopting on September 11th. And so this chart, you can see here, your tax rate is split into two parts, operation and debt. The increase on the debt side is just over 21%. It's 3.8 cents on the rate. That is phase next. That is that piece of it. If the council goes with the proposed rate, it would be 1% on the actual rate for operations, or 6.4% if they went up to the max rate. So tax rate history, just a little bit different way. We showed you the total rate earlier. This top line is that same total rate, just on the graph. You can see here this green one is your debt rate. The blue one is your operations rate. So you see, in some of these instances where the decision was made to hold the tax rate steady, where there was an increase in the debt, you then had a decrease in the operating revenue side. So that's some of the trade-offs that are made when those decisions are made. So we do have overlapping tax rates. You have 5 different entities that all come together on your one tax bill. You have the city, which is about 20% of the pie. You have the hospital, the college, the county, and then your largest piece is the school district. So you're receiving all of those bills at once from Tarrant County because they act on our behalf to send out those bills. So looking at the impact here, our average home value this year, and that's net taxable, is just over $203,000. So for an average house at the 56-cent tax rate, the annual tax bill is just over $1,100. For a property that becomes eligible for a tax freeze during this year, the ceiling, depending on which rate is, once you hit over 65, you have a $50,000 exemption. And then your tax bill would be capped, depending on which rate's decided, either you have 860 or the 888. That's for a new exemption. If you already have an exemption, you're capped at whatever year your ceiling went into effect. So, as here, if you became eligible last year, the average senior house was just over 147,000 at the 52-cent tax rate. That was their tax bill last year. And so this year, new rate, higher value, would calculate higher, but it would be capped at the same initial value. This piece is just looking at, so on average, if we had the $95 a month on the proposed rate. And so that's how your dollars are split per month. So that same almost half, or actually almost half to police and fire right here. This is that debt payment. And then the allocations to your other general government, general fund operating areas. So, police is just under, or just over $29 a month of your monthly tax bill on average. So we'll turn it back over to Brian and Denise.
Thank you, Meg.
So I just want to walk through a couple more slides and our presentation is over. I think you've heard through this presentation that this is a status quo budget. We did not add anything new to the budget. That said, we continue to have some unmet needs in this organization with respect to the services that we provide to our community. And we sat down with our department head team and developed kind of a test. Because I think it's important for the mayor and council to understand some of the unmet needs that continue. And so we sat down and decided, what's the difference between a need and a want? There are nice shiny toys out there that would be wonderful to have, but how far do they go to our bottom line with respect to the services that we have versus actual needs in our organization with respect to resources, whether they're people or things or items. So we sat down and developed a test, this is an unmet mandate, it's an unfunded mandate from the state, from the feds. Is there some kind of state requirement? Is it meeting council goal? Are we getting tremendous amount of input from our residents that we need this? So they had this, in some ways, doing kind of a cost-benefit analysis of any kind of additions to the budget. Again, recognizing that they're not included in the proposed budget. So then we had each of our departments submit what those items are. And this is kind of a synopsis of what they are on the general fund side. I think this is almost all general fund items. There were several public safety positions. We have not added a police officer to the street or a firefighter to provide EMS or fire services since the late 1990s. Chief Fay, what's the increase in your calls for service since then?
36%.
So his calls for service have gone up 36%. We have the highest calls for service in AGB due to some characteristics within our community. Yet we have not added a firefighter since the late 1990s. Again, haven't added a police officer since the 1990s. And most certainly our calls for service on the police side have gone up as well. So there are public safety positions out there we wish we could add, but are not in this proposed budget. There are some other administrative positions. I need a purchasing coordinator. It's not in the budget. There's other maintenance, equipment, landscaping needs, not in the budget. Some technology and software needs that are in the budget. We walked the mayor and council through this. We at least want to have an understanding of what are some of these needs, how would they benefit service moving forward. That because of our budget situation that we're hopefully outlined for you tonight, continue not to be funded. And then here's another list of some unmet needs that continue. We have, if in a perfect world, if we had the funding, our public works department would be getting another $3.6 million to do wastewater rehabilitation work. Another $5 million of drainage improvements that we need today that we could be doing in this new fiscal year if we had that kind of budget money to do it. We have some software needs in our public safety, computer replacement needs, and these are all items that support the bottom line service that we provide to our residents, to the community. So, but we have to live within the means that we have today, and that's the reason for the proposed budget that we provided to the mayor and council. So we have another public meeting tomorrow. We're going to do the exact same, on Saturday. We're going to do the exact same thing all over again. There's an actual public hearing on the 28th for residents to come and provide input to the mayor and council. A second public hearing on September 4th. Mayor and council will have some other discussions that night with respect to the budget overall, with respect to the tax rate that they're looking at, and a final approval of that budget, we hope, on September 11th, including the tax rate. So that's the process moving forward. And with that, we're going to end, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.